Hello, everyone, and welcome to our mission presentation on VIPER, also known as NASA's Volatiles Investigating Polar Exploration Rover. This here shows an image of what VIPER would look like at the beginning of its exciting exploration on the moon. Now to the introduction.
In 2009, NASA discovered subsurface ice on the south pole of the moon. As seen in the figure on the right, the blue represents the distribution of the ice on the south pole. From this discovery, the VIPER mission was born, to build a rover that would discover and analyze the ice on the South Pole. To manage and construct the rover for this mission, NASA's Ames Research Center in Silicon Valley was in charge. They had a unique set of challenges to address when building the rover for the mission, with those challenges being the extreme temperatures of the moon, a rover that is capable of real-time driving, since areas of the mission didn't have good orbital scouting, a rover that is capable of complex mobility and complex route planning, and lastly, a rover with headlights, since it would be exploring dark craters the sun does not reach on the South Pole.
The VIPER mission is a part of NASA's Commercial Lunar Payload Services, or CLPS initiative, which partners with private companies to transport rovers and instruments to the moon. Key players included NASA, which built and constructed the VIPER rover, Astrobiotech Technology, which used their Griffin lander to deliver VIPER to the moon and ensure a safe landing, and SpaceX, which provided the Falcon Heavy rocket to carry the Griffin lander and VIPER from Earth to the moon. So VIPER's 100-day mission aimed to analyze volatiles or ice water on the surface of the moon at various depths and temperatures within 4 soil environments. The data collected from VIPER would then be transmitted back to Earth, being utilized to create resource maps and helping scientists determine the location and concentration of ice on the moon. All right, now let's take a look at this YouTube video that shows us a little bit more about VIPER. This YouTube video showed us really exciting news for VIPER, as it may be key to finding water ice, which would provide a key resource used for drinking, oxygen, and even to fuel our rockets. This would help sustain astronauts' presence on the moon for longer.
So here's a detailed image showing all the different tools on the VIPER rover itself. I'll briefly talk about the VIPER rover. So it's about 8 feet tall and 5 feet wide and long. It's engineered to be agile, so being able to move across different inclines and different soil types. There's different camera systems that allow operators on Earth to see the landscape in near real time and send navigation commands as well. So first, on the VIPER rover itself, there's a Trident drill, which essentially collects soil samples for analysis. There's also the Star Tracker, which provides localization and orientation data to support the rover's navigation system. There's also aft cameras in the back of the rover that help with situational awareness. And the rover is solar powered, so the 3 solar arrays help generate the necessary energy the rover requires to operate. For safety measures, VIPER has 4 monochrome hazard cameras that help identify and avoid hazards. There's also the M-SOLO, which is a mass spectrometer observing lunar operations, and this measures gas compositions near the surface of the moon. There's the NIRVSS, the Near-Infrared Volatiles Spectrometer System, that analyzes the soil samples brought up by the Trident drill. There's the NSS, the Neutron Spectrometer System, that searches for hydrogen-rich material. Furthermore, there are the flight avionics that manage the rover's overall control and power distribution. A radiator system regulates excess heat of the rover. And finally, there are additional tools and instruments that support situational awareness and communication as well. The VIPER mission is carried out in several phases. First is preparation, which involves planning, selecting instruments, and choosing the landing site. Next, NASA delivers the rover to a CLPS partner, so that's the Commercial Lunar Payload Services, and they essentially handle the launch. Then comes the launch itself, followed by the cruise phase, which is the trip to the moon. After that is the descent and the landing, where the rover arrives on the lunar surface. Once landed, the team performs instrument checks and the first drive to make sure everything works well. And then the rover begins surface operations, so sampling ice from different lunar environments. And finally, the mission ends when the rover eventually freezes in the extreme cold of the moon's polar regions.
Now, let's explore the future of the VIPER mission. Okay, so the VIPER lander was initially scheduled to launch in late 2023, but the mission was unfortunately canceled on July 17, 2024, due to various reasons. So, first, escalating costs made continuing the mission increasingly expensive, while canceling it was expected to save around $84 million. Secondly, repeated delays arising from a disruption on the supply chain, notably from COVID-19, slowed the construction of both the VIPER and the Griffin lander. And third, continuing the VIPER risked taking funding and resources away from other CLPS missions. So, considering these challenges, NASA concluded that canceling the VIPER mission was the most responsible decision, even though the rover was nearly ready to launch. After cancellation, NASA began to look for alternatives, with the first one being partnerships, which would send the VIPER to the moon at no additional cost to the government. However, in May of 2025, NASA announced it was canceling its partnership proposals as they were unable to find a viable partnership. Moving forward, NASA planned to disassemble the VIPER's instruments and potentially use them for future missions. In this option, NASA could make maximum use of the technology, time, and money that went into the VIPER. Now it's time to explore a new development. As of September 19th, 2025, the mission is officially back on the table, with the target landing date in late 2027. NASA chose Blue Origin, which is Jeff Bezos' space company, to deliver VIPER to the moon's south pole using its new Blue Moon Mk1 lander. So, what exactly does this mean for VIPER? Well, Blue Origin will be in charge of getting the rover safely to the moon, which involves both the ride and the landing, while NASA will be responsible for conducting the rover operations once VIPER is on the ground, as well as the planning and running of scientific experiments on the moon. Thank you, everyone, for listening to our presentation on VIPER, and we hope you're just as excited for VIPER's launch as we are.